Welcome to the Deep Dive. You've shared some, well, truly astonishing source material with us today. Excerpts from a book, really a memoir, that tells an almost unbelievable story of survival, transformation. And it really challenges some core ideas about mental toughness, resilience, even motivation itself.
Absolutely. What jumps out immediately is how the author uses his own life, this incredibly harsh life, as a kind of laboratory. He's dissecting the human mind's capacity to go way beyond what we think are our limits.
Yeah, it's not theoretical stuff. It's raw, it's unfiltered, forged in, well, extreme suffering, frankly.
Yeah.
And it really makes you, the listener, look inward, doesn't it? Makes you confront your own potential or maybe the limits you've set for yourself.
Exactly. These excerpts from Can't Hurt Me, they lay out a life story that, statistically speaking, just shouldn't have happened.
Right. The source takes us from this childhood filled with just horrifying abuse, deep insecurity, all the way through this dramatic personal transformation to becoming someone who conquered, some of the world's toughest military training, pushed physical limits in ways that seem almost superhuman.
So our mission today really is to unpack this narrative, pull out the core concepts, the surprising insights about the mind, about capability.
And see what lessons we can actually take from this very intense story and maybe apply to our own lives, whatever our background, whatever our goals are.
It's definitely going to be intense because the source material pulls no punches, but the promise is this kind of profound understanding of pushing limits.
And it starts with this incredible contrast, doesn't it? The image versus the reality.
Yeah, it sets the scene in Williamsville, New York, back in 1981. Paints this picture of, leafy suburbs, friendly streets, beautiful homes.
Model citizens, doctors, lawyers, executives. He even mentions the cars, like a 62 Rolls-Royce, an 80 Mercedes, an 81 Corvette. Fancy stuff.
And he positions his family, the Goggins family, right at the top, the tip of that spear, projecting this image of being happy, well-adjusted, living the dream.
But then, bam, that image just shatters immediately. He sees that corner lot on Paradise Road. It was actually hell.
The father, Trinus, had this absolute suffocating control, especially financially. The mother had zero money of her own. No bank account, no credit cards, nothing.
And the father would, meticulously count every single dollar after closing his business, Skateland, the roller rink, absolute control down to the last penny.
And it wasn't just financial control, it was brutal. Physical, emotional abuse. The source describes belt beatings, the mother's face swollen, caked with dried blood.
It's horrifying. And the detail about the police, when they were called, they'd just ignore her injuries. They bought the father's explanation of necessary domestic discipline.
Yeah, he specifically says those were different days and adds no #MeToo to really hammer home how little recourse she had back then.
Life at Skateland itself wasn't any better, was it? It was just an extension of that control.
Right. He calls family dinner this bullshit facsimile in the back office, eating super fast off electric burners on the floor before the rink even opened.
And his job, as a kid, renting skates, having to carry a step stool, climb shelves just to reach the small sizes, while his mother's the cashier, handling all the money the father obsessed over.
So there's this constant, pervasive fear of the father's all-seeing eye, fear of punishment if anything went wrong, especially with the money.
And the source doesn't shy away from the father's other activities either.
Yeah.
Criminal stuff.
No, it mentions him running prostitutes across the border to Canada, Fort Erie, and even using a summer cottage belonging to a bank president, apparently, as a sort of pop-up brothel to get loans.
And the mother knew. She saw the women, walked in on them, but she was completely trapped, 100% dependent, no way out.
The level of danger is just stark. That detail about the loaded pistol kept under the cushion where the author slept at 6 years old.
Yeah, he says a typical night included that detail. It wasn't just abuse, it was the constant threat of lethal violence.
So the breaking point, the incident described that leads to the escape, it's incredibly visceral.
It starts with the father's comment to the mother, "You're raising a gangster," aimed at the author. And that triggers a belt beating.
The mother hits the panic button, the house alarm goes off, police arrive.
But again, no help. They completely accept the father's story, look right past the mother's injured face, dismiss it as necessary domestic discipline. Just a total betrayal by the system.
And the aftermath is chilling. The father's just stewing at the kitchen table. The older brother, Trinus Jr., who the author notes both feared and worshipped their father, is pouring him shots. serving him, almost.
Then the father says that line to the brother, "When you grow up, I'm going to want to see you be the man of your house, and you're going to see me be a man tonight."
And later that night, he beats the mother senseless. The brother hides in his room. The author says he ignored the darkness.
But the author himself, he says he paid close fucking attention. That contrast is huge, isn't it? One retweeting, the other absorbing every detail. Maybe that's where some of that hypervigilance started.
It seems like it. And that focus, that paying attention, leads directly to the escape attempt. It's the author, still a child, pushing his mother. "We gotta go, Mom. Mom, we gotta go."
They manage to get out, but the car breaks down. Gas station. Mother's hysterical, calling her friend Betty.
And Betty's instructions are key. Stay calm, find the attendant, figure out where you are. Turns out it's outside Erie, Pennsylvania. Betty arranges for the car repair, tells them to find a hotel.
But Erie isn't exactly salvation. Broken car, no room at the Holiday Inn. They're described as the picture of desperation, holding their stuff in black trash bags.
Yeah, the night manager lets them sleep on rollaway beds in the conference room. Their own personal purgatory, he calls it. Have to be out super early.
And the mother, staying up all night, watching the road, watching their bikes. It just shows that constant fear, the weight on her shoulders, even after escaping the house itself.
From Erie, they end up in Brazil, Indiana. A new beginning, the source calls it, but it's a massive culture shock compared to city life.
And the struggles continue, just different ones. Financial struggles are huge. He talks about counting change on the floor for bills, gas, groceries, sometimes just eating Hardee's burgers to get by. His mother misses Toughness Jr., who stayed behind.
The author, though, seems to adapt a bit better at first, makes friends, and crucially, he stops wetting the bed. He even says, "It seemed that I was healing." A moment of relative calm.
School in Brazil becomes this really key factor. Sister Catherine at the small Catholic school, only 18 kids. She's presented as this huge positive influence.
Right. She doesn't blame his academic struggles on his problems, even though he clearly had them from the trauma. She keeps high expectations, has this no excuses mentality.
Her whole approach was, look, everybody learns in a different way, and we're going to figure out how you learn. She stuck with him, didn't get frustrated like the later teacher.
Which is a sharp contrast to Mrs. D later on back in Indiana. She went straight to frustration, yelling, getting right in his face.
He describes it as tearing open a Pandora's box. It re-traumatized him, made school a torture chamber. Mrs. D just wanted him out, and the school backed her up.
Until his mother fought for him, relentlessly, eventually agreeing to speech and group therapy just to keep him in school.
His reaction to the therapy: "These boys are crazy," and his mother agreed. The source points out, yeah, he was a damaged kid, but the science of toxic stress wasn't understood then like it is now.
It really highlights the difference between Sister Catherine's patient figure-it-out approach and Mrs. D's labeling and frustration, which just made things worse.
And on top of all that learning difficulty and trauma,
Yeah.
you've got the prejudice in Brazil, Indiana.
Yeah, being in a hick hometown, being the only one of your kind, as he puts it, meant constant risk being suspected, ignored, bullied, mistreated.
He says it pretty bluntly. That's just the way life is, especially back then. Describes his life feeling like this full-fledged fuck you fortune cookie, always delivering the same bad news.
But here's where a really counterintuitive idea comes in from the source. It talks about taking that pain, that whole list of excuses, and actually using it as fuel.
It sounds crazy, right? But the idea is to consciously shape the pain, absorb its energy, and flip it. Use it to drive success instead of letting it destroy you.
And that approach gets tested again intensely with the next major trauma, the death of Wilmeth Irving.
Wilmeth had represented hope, a chance to move back to the city, Indianapolis. His mother was finally coming out of her shell. Things were looking up.
And then, devastatingly, Wilmeth is found dead, murdered, on the very day the author was supposed to play basketball with him. He was only 43.
The impact is immediate, pure rage. He punches the refrigerator so hard it leaves a dent. But even in that rage, his first thought is for his mother.
The scene at Wilmeth's house is just disturbing. Yellow police tape like a fucked up Christmas gift. His mother's denial at first, thinking it's a prank.
Then she remembers he'd been shot months before, but dismissed it. Hints of this secret street life he had.
And the author, just 14 years old, walks through the crime scene, glances in the garage, sees the pooled blood. And nobody, not his mom, not the family, not the police, seems bothered by him being there, this kid absorbing that heavy vibe.
Again, just this complete lack of shielding, continued exposure to raw trauma and violence.
And the source directly links this grief and trauma back to the racism he was facing. Says after Wilma's murder, with racist taunts raining down, he felt like free-falling with no fucking chute.
It describes this terrifying incident with a pickup truck. Truck slows down, teenagers inside, one in the back.
They keep walking, the truck stops. Passenger gets out, pistol aimed right at the author's head, starts stalking towards him.
He has to run. Into the woods, dogs chasing him. He fully expects to be run down like something out of, his words, Mississippi circa 1965.
The dogs eventually give up, and the quiet that follows, he describes it almost paradoxically as cleansing. By the time he turned back, the fear was gone. He felt like he owned that fucking street.
It's such a strange, powerful moment. Reclaiming some internal power, even after facing that kind of terror.
Then there's the Spanish class incident. The whole room goes quiet. His focus narrows onto this racist message left just for him in his workbook. Targeted hate, right there in school.
So you have this deep well of pain, trauma, grief, racism. It's overwhelming. But then the source introduces this flicker of inspiration.
Yeah, it comes from the story of Scott Guerin from the Pararescue Jump Orientation course, PJOC.
Guerin's story is insane. High-altitude jump, canopy collapses, teammate hits him in the face with his knees, knocks him out cold, and he somehow survives. Impossible odds.
And that story hits the author hard. Guerin is living proof that it's possible to transcend anything that doesn't kill you. That becomes the spark.
That's what makes him decide to enlist in the Air Force after graduation. School, which was already such a struggle, suddenly felt more irrelevant.
But high school was still tough academically. He admits to hacking, cheating, copying, feeling like an academic fraud.
Private school got too expensive, so he moves to this big public school, North Central. Feels totally out of place. At first calls himself the preppy-ass white boy until he proves himself at basketball.
Although even basketball had its issues. The trash talk style from Indy didn't fly in the more reserved farm country they'd been in. Coaches got embarrassed, took the ball from him, put him in awkward positions just to shut me up good.
He also describes drifting from his mother during this time, making his own meals, doing his own laundry, getting cocky, thinking he didn't need her, staying out late, crashing with friends, blowing money until he spent my last dollar.
Then comes the real wake-up call. The letter from school. Too many unexcused absences over a quarter of the year missed. A D average. He's not going to graduate unless things change drastically.
And his mother's reaction. Not yelling, just exhaustion. She'd fought so hard for him already.
This is what triggers that pivotal shower scene. He calls it a solo intervention. Just spontaneously venting, screaming at himself in the mirror.
But it wasn't just venting. It was brutal honesty. It's on you. I was there, bitch. Nobody is coming to save your ass. It's up to you.
He shaves his head completely, looks different, feels different. It's the first time, he says, he truly held himself accountable. That becomes this new ritual, this intense self-confrontation that drives him to fix his grades, get in shape, graduate, and finally get into the Air Force.
He has this moment of clarity about his own self-deception. That negative feedback loop of cheating and scamming felt like progress until he hit a brick fucking wall called reality. He had to face the truth, hard.
And this leads directly into one of his core concepts. Call yourself out. He hammers home how hard this is for people individually and culturally. Nobody wants to hear the hard truth.
Right. He links it to bigger issues, like people refusing to admit racism still exists because it's uncomfortable, and he throws that challenge right back at you, the listener. Are you willing to hear the hard truth about yourself? What are you ignoring?
From there, the source shows him putting this brutal honesty into practice. He starts, in his words, brainwashing myself into craving discomfort.
Running in the rain, running in the snow. When his mind screamed stop, that other voice, the one born in the shower, demanded, get your fucking running shoes on.
He mentions facing the times he wussed out at what he later calls the accountability mirror. That fueled him to deliberately seek out uncomfortable experiences, believing it would make him tougher.
Learning was still a massive struggle, though. Nothing was as hard for me, he says. Failing the ASVAB, the military entrance exam, twice proves that.
His mother gets him a tutor, and the system that finally works is just painstaking. Transcription, memorization, recall, read a textbook page, write it down 3 times, until knowledge stuck to the mirror of my mind.
It took immense effort. An hour of tutoring meant 6 hours of his own review work, but it paid off. 6 months, he goes from a 4th grade reading level to high school senior level. Vocabulary mushroomed. Thousands of flashcards.
It wasn't just studying, it was an obsession for learning. Driven by pure survival instinct, he needed the military to escape Brazil. He had to pass that ASVAB, which he finally did, 3rd try, hitting the minimum score required.
And he notes, living with purpose changed everything. That focus gave him energy, direction, and something else happened. The hate he felt towards racists started to fade. It flaked from his soul.
Why? Because he says he finally considered the fucking source. He looked at the people dishing out racist abuse and realized how insecure they were, how uncomfortable they were in their own skin.
Their hate wasn't about him, it was about them. Something was very wrong with them, not me. That mental shift was huge. It stripped them of their power over him.
He points out how dangerous it is to value others' opinions, especially when you're insecure, maybe feeling like the only one. Once he made that connection, their hate comes from their own issues. It wasn't worth his energy anymore.
So instead of insults hurting him, they became more fuel for the engine.
Which brings us to challenge. #2, the explicit formulation. The accountability mirror. It's about standing eyeball to eyeball with yourself and get raw and real.
Importantly, he stresses this isn't about self-love or boosting your ego. It's the opposite. It's about abolishing the ego, facing the ugly truths.
He describes writing insecurities, dreams, goals on Post-its, sticking them on the mirror, and the language is deliberately harsh. If you need more education, you aren't smart enough. Period, point blank.
Or, if you look in the mirror and see someone who is obviously overweight, that means you're fucking fat. Own it. He argues you have to be unkind to yourself in these moments to build thick skin, to build resilience. Own where you are, no excuses before you can change.
Okay, so after the Air Force, there's this low point described. He's working for Ecolab, pest control technician.
Yeah, baiting traps, finding dead rats, mice, roaches, a world away from the military mission. Wasn't the mission I signed up for, he says.
And his physical state reflected that. He had gone from 175 pounds in boot camp at 19 to nearly 300 pounds just 4 years after discharge.
That detail about sewing an athletic sock into his work pants so they wouldn't split.
Yeah.
It paints such a vivid picture. A sorry fucking sight, in his own words.
He'd gotten into powerlifting, added mass, but it was muscle and fat. He says being big was a way to hide David Goggins, the 175-pound person inside, burying him under 21-inch biceps and a flabby belly.
He grew a mustache, tried to look intimidating on the outside, but knew inside he felt like a pussy, a haunting feeling.
His daily routine back then: steak and shake milkshake, Hostess donuts on the drive home, living in a nice apartment on a golf course with his wife Pam and her daughter.
And he throws in that unsettling detail again, marrying the girl whose dad had called him a nigger years before. Asking himself, what does that say about me? Just layers of internal conflict.
Then comes the turning point. Completely unexpected. Flipping channel, sees a documentary. Navy SEALs, Bud's Hell Week.
Here's phrases like, Navy SEALs, toughest the world. Sees the guy suffering, sweating, ringing the bell to quit.
And his reaction isn't pity, it's jealousy. He says he was jealous of them, jealous of their misery, the extreme discomfort they were pushing through. That image becomes the catalyst.
So he starts calling recruiting offices. Finds Petty Officer Stephen Shaljo in Naval Reserves. Shaljo's described as warm, but with some pit bull in him, new to recruiting in Indiana.
And Shaljo doesn't flinch at the author's size. Weigh-in is nearly 300 pounds. Navy max is 191 pounds for his height. But Shaljo sees something, believes in him.
Shaljo later calls it fate. But the author is still riddled with doubt. He failed the ASVAB twice before. Can he really do this?
And the timing is just uncanny. This decision sparked by the SEAL show happens the same night as this disastrous pest control job. Dead rodents, scattering roaches, like a symbol of his life falling apart, just as this new path opens up.
What happens next is just insane. The physical transformation, he loses 106 pounds in less than 3 months, from nearly 300 down to 191.
Everyone around him thinks it's impossible. Don't expect too much. No way you could do it. That weak-ass dialogue, he calls it. It fed his doubt, sure, but it also ignited this powerful us-against-them fire.
He uses that Rocky versus Apollo analogy. Rocky down, Mickey yelling, stay down, but he digs deep, pulls himself up. Apollo can't believe it. He felt like Rocky fighting himself and the doubters.
4 weeks before BUBS, he's 215 pounds faster, stronger, running 6 miles a day, biking 20-plus medals, swimming 2-plus miles in winter. He's not just meeting standards, he's doubling the recommended workouts.
His goal wasn't just to survive Hell Week.
Yeah.
It was to be the best. I didn't want to be just one of those 40. I wanted to be the best.
Yeah.
That mindset was already locked in.
He takes the SVIB again, 3rd time's the charm, scores 65, needed 50. He's so desperate for the news, he begs the admin officer to tell him right away. The officer breaks the rules, says, I'm breaking every rule in the book right now, and gives him the score. Confirmation, it was everything.
BEDS first phase begins. Psycho Pete, an instructor, welcomes them. Great pleasure to watch you suffer. Freezing water hoses, endless punishing reps, standard tests like rope climbs, of course, sand runs.
But having pushed himself so hard just to get there, the author describes first phase as child's play compared to Hell Week.
Hell Week, he calls it medieval. Third week of BUDS, 130 straight hours. Constant ache, hyperventilating just to breathe. It goes way beyond the physical. It strips you down, reveals your heart and character, tests your mindset.
Surf torture is central. Hit the surf, you miserable fucking turds. That constant cycle of freezing cold, wet, sandy misery. Instructors like Psycho Pete are actively hunting quitters.
In this Inferno, he finds a kindred spirit. Bill Brown, a.k.a. Freak Brown, calls him the white version of David Goggins.
Freak Brown's own backstory is rough. Bullied for a cleft palate, slow learner, youth detention, gas station job, freezing on a rusted bike. Couldn't swim, taught himself, passed the SEAL swim test on his third try.
They recognize each other. 2 chips on their shoulders, hard as hell. They decide to be the pillars of Boat Crew 2, taking the front, heaviest spot, knowing neither would quit.
There's also Kenny Bigby, the other black man in the class. He'd been injured in his first Hell Week, now back for more.
The source tells this story about log PT. Kenny's vomiting blood, snot streaming, instructors pull him off, but he forces himself right back on the log. The author hears Kenny gasp, "David Goggins is back on the log," acknowledging their shared defiance, that refusal to let the mind quit even when the body screams.
The competitions are non-stop. Boats, logs, paddling a course with heavy gear. Win, you get a brief rest. Lose, you get extra beatdowns from Psycho Pete, who's laughing while hunting quitters.
Leading Boat Crew 2 with Freak Brown, they refuse to fall back. Psycho tries to break them on a sand run, sprinting, elephant walks, jogging, wind sprints, rapid changes, but they mirror him, stick to him. He did not smoke Boat Crew 2. A small victory, but huge mentally.
Then comes a major test of his personal weakness, an unexpected open water swim. After a med check, Toradol shot for his knee, storm rolls in, 1,000 yards offshore.
This hits his deepest fear.
Yay.
Water. Lifelong, paralyzing fear. Feels like a death sentence. He hadn't prepared enough for this specific scenario.
But in that moment, he realizes you have to take risks beyond our capabilities. You have to push even when you're not ready. He's flailing, swallowing water, vest, knee brace, boots dragging him down, fear overwhelming, but he keeps going.
Hell weekends. He graduates. And not just graduates, he finishes at the top of his class. The transformation is staggering. 297 pounds, couldn't run a quarter mile, to BUDS graduate, top of the class. He knows he's a bad motherfucker.
And he feels he's starting to tap into its power, the power of his mind. Hell Week wasn't just physical, it was the crucible that forged his mental strength.
Even seemingly smaller drills tested this, like the underwater knot tying. 15-foot pool, negative buoyancy, tread water, tie knots. His old fear flares up, that inner voice. "What the fuck are you doing here? You're an imposter."
It's that battle. Panic versus relaxation. Bobbing drills, forcing calm, switch drills, using fins on hands, learning to be calm underwater, conquering fear through sheer mental discipline.
All these experiences, this repeated exposure to intense suffering, leads him to crystallize the idea of the calloused mind.
Right. The analogy is like your hands getting calluses from gripping steel. Your mind needs hardship abuse, failures, disappointments, self-imposed pain to build its own protection, its own calluses against suffering.
But the key point he makes is where that callus forms. If you see yourself as a victim, if the pain makes you resentful, cautious, angry, fearful, you might be emotionally guarded, but you're not heart of mind in the way he means. That was him as a teenager, he says.
But after choosing to go back for a second Hell Week, choosing the fire again, he was different. By fighting through, accepting pain, being open and ready for more, deliberately seeking discomfort, he built a different kind of callus, one that allowed him to withstand hailstorms of pain and actually use it to grow stronger.
So when pain hits, instead of negative self-talk, he trains himself to remember past struggles, choose fight over flight, use that adrenaline rush not to retreat, but to go even harder.
And he applies this logic even to everyday stuff, work or school obstacles. Pushing through the urge to quit might not give you that same adrenaline dump, but the practice of perseverance builds the mental muscle against self-doubt.
He acknowledges our evolutionary wiring pushes us towards comfort, towards doubting big goals. His instruction is blunt: don't let doubt into the mind. Just shut it down instantly.
Hell Week actually ends early for his class, 36 hours short. Attrition was insane. Only 25 graduated out of 156. He's among them, but he's broken, swollen, on crutches, fractured shins.
Walk week is shortened. He's running 60 miles a week on broken shins, searing pain. Still using the old method. Tape that shit up. He recognizes even then it wasn't sustainable, needed a new approach he'd find later.
Getting rolled twice meant his future was uncertain. He questions if he wants another hurricane of pain. But he leaves BUDS with this profound self-awareness, mastery over his mind, even if the path isn't clear.
He thinks back to that earlier moment, questioning the SEAL path, thinking about being a firefighter, confronts himself again in the accountability mirror, tells the truth out loud, because I couldn't lie anymore.
Then the unexpected pregnancy news hits. Broken body, deep debt, unstable life, not in love. He describes staring into the accountability mirror over his wife's shoulder, seeing his own reflection in the mirror that never lies, and having to face that brutal truth.
He uses Sean Dobbs' failure in his third Hell Week as another critical lesson. Dobbs focused on competing with the alphas, not the boat crew mission. His mind cracked under the pressure, the cold. He started complaining about uninjured feet while others were seriously hurt.
The author saw the look that comes over a man's face after he surrenders his soul. He connects it right back to his own earlier quit in pararescue. He recognized that look.
It leads to this idea about the kind of callousness needed in special ops accepting cold-blooded truths about a brutal world. Not necessarily good, but necessary for survival there.
When instructors asked him, "Why are you doing this?" his internal answer wasn't heroic. It was about tapping his darkness, feeding off it, leaning on that calloused mind. He knew visualization needed work, but the core was relentless self-discipline to schedule suffering into your day every day, believing that on the other side lies a whole other life.
And this sets up probably the most famous concept from the book, the 40% rule.
Yeah, the idea that when we feel like quitting, when our mind screams stop, we're usually only at about 40% of our actual capacity. We have 60% more in the tank.
Our mind has this governor, right? Designed for comfort, safety, conserving energy. It tells you you're done, but it's lying, essentially.
To access that extra 60%, you have to consciously override the governor. Stress your pain tolerance. Let go of your self-limiting stories, your identity. That's how you unlock new levels of performance.
But it's not instant. It takes years, he says. 20 years to gain 20 years of experience, callousing the mind day after day, deliberately chasing pain like it's your damn job. Because if you want to find your limits, it is your job.
Ultra running becomes the next arena for testing this. The San Diego one-day race. Simple loop course, but the scene of his total destruction.
His prep is wild. Powerlifting heavy the day before, 315-pound deadlifts and squats, 225-pound bench. Not exactly typical ultra prep.
And the challenge itself. Run a marathon with no training, then keep going for potentially 75 plus more miles in 24 hours? Incomprehensible metrics, he calls it. He fully expected it to end badly.
And the pain was intense. Quads throbbing, feet bleeding, chafed raw. Shins felt like shock therapy. Venom, lungs seizing, hawking brown mucus, cold, short of breath, entering that other world where pain is the only language.
The raw human details are striking. Bloody piss, shitting himself, trying to hide it from his crew, Kate, so she wouldn't make him stop. Sitting head in hands at 70 miles, 12 hours in, no training, feeling the dream slipping away.
Kate coming back, not knowing how bad it really was, but not giving up on him. Bringing food, Matrin, literally helping him stand up. That support was crucial.
And it's right there, at rock bottom, questioning everything, that the cookie jar concept is born.
Right. It's about consciously reaching back for past victories, past successes, no matter how small, when you're in deep pain or doubt.
You overcame that challenge. You can overcome this one. It doesn't have to be huge, like finishing Hell Week. It could be finally understanding a tough paragraph when learning to read or losing the first 5 pounds. Those small wins are proof. My goal was not impossible.
You actively savor those wins, store them away. Not narcissism, but proof of capability. Use them as fuel to new and bigger ones. When you're in the thick of it, exhausted, miserable, you pull one out for inspiration. Spark small fires to become the motherfucking inferno.
He finishes that San Diego race 101 miles in under 19 hours, way over the Badwater qualifying standard. Calls Chris Kosman, the race director, expecting props, gets voicemail, then email, a reminder that external validation isn't the point, or guaranteed.
But he knew what he'd done. SEAL training made him hard, left him wanting more. San Diego pushed him further, running that far that fast with zero training. Incredible physical feats that didn't seem possible. But they happened, proof of the mind's power.
The journey continues, with more evolution, more setbacks. Prepping for Badwater 135, the legendary 135-mile race through Death Valley, his feet and shins are still messed up.
He has to devise this whole complex system just to run. Inserts, tons of tape, ankles, heels, shins, heel wedge. Needs a lot of props to run nearly pain-free,
Yeah.
acknowledging the body's limits even while pushing them.
He's grinding out 100-mile weeks while working, running his 16-mile commute. The route description captures his reality. Gritty streets, overpasses, rats, homeless camps. Not your tourist brochure's version, than the fancy Silver Strand path, living the SEAL legend while trying to keep it real.
The Hurt 100 race in Hawaii throws new stuff at him. Mountains, elevation, heat, humidity, slick mud,
Yeah.
training in the jungle, developing a nose for swine, heart-skipping beats, risk of injury, exhaustion, magnifying stress. He's near his limit with 40-plus miles left.
Sees another runner, Akos, delirious, offers help. Akos refuses. He has to switch gears internally, from camaraderie to barbarian mode. Just keep moving, finish his race.
Bad water itself. Mile 122, Kate tells him elite runner Scott Jurek is only 2 miles behind. He's over 26 hours in. He digs deep, taps into his power hiking stride from ruck marches, power hiking 15-minute miles, eating on the moves. The heat was the great equalizer.
Last 10 miles, up Whitney Portal Road. Pure agony. Every single step was agony. Finishes in just over 30 hours. Wanted to quit maybe 30 times. Mentally crawled through 135 miles. Finishes 5th out of 90. Incredible.
And he circles back to the core message. Life is a mind game. Your opponent is yourself. Stick with the process. The impossible becomes routine. Mentions the hashtags. Hashtag can't hurt me. Hashtag the 40% rule. Hashtag don't get comfortable.
Ultraman race in Kona, another beast. 10K ocean swim, 3+ hours. Chafing rips his skin bloody. Day 3, the 52-mile run. Done on sheer will, no intellect.
He ran hard, not smart. Went out too fast, didn't save anything to take someone's soul at the end, just brute force pushing.
And the body starts sending clearer signals. The relentless pushing takes a toll. He describes feeling like he was dying at 38. Body shredded. Thought the cemetery was next. But even then, his reflection isn't self-pity. It's gratitude. He felt he'd lived 10 lives. Wasn't looking for another cookie jar victory, just felt. Done fighting that specific battle, grateful for what he'd endured despite the cost.
This leads him to Joe Hippensteel, the stretching guru. Hippensteel's own story. Injured athlete who realized extreme tension was the culprit, flexibility was the cure.
Hippensteel diagnoses the author with an extreme case of muscle lockup. Muscles like frozen steak, blood couldn't circulate. Explained why his body kept shutting down.
So stretching becomes the new torture. Plunge me into the fire. Inflammation, stiffness, long holds hurt like hell.
But it works, he gives an update. Thanks to consistent stretching, listening to his body differently, he's in better shape at 43 than in his 20s. Used to be sick, stressed, just taping that shit up. Now he's smarter, but crucially, still getting after it, integrating recovery into the discipline.
He gives that recent example. Wildfire crew. Digging fire lines, 10K feet, 45-degree slope. Close call with a falling tree. 18-hour shifts, 12 hours sleeping outside. Filthy for days. Crew was young, tough, men and women, no complaints. Cleared 3.2 miles. Shows the mindset applies anywhere, not just races or BUDS.
The source also updates us on others. Sledge, still a SEAL, became an endurance athlete. Ironman, iron sharpens iron. Sean Dobbs, officer LTCMDR, Ironman, owns his Hell Week failure, uses it. SBG, still Navy, now a data analyst. Egghead with an edge.
And his mother's transformation is incredible. Master's degree, domestic violence task force, VP at a medical school. Completely overcame her past, built an empowered life.
He mentions meeting his brother, Toughness Jr., years later, after his daughter was tragically murdered. They hugged and he realized all of our bullshit issues no longer mattered. A moment of shared humanity overcoming deep trauma.
He contrasts quitting versus persevering again. People who quit feel small or regretful. Those who stay face more pain, more doubt, even from biggest fans saying, don't expect too much. But enduring turns that doubt into fuel.
His hope for you, the listener, is that you get nose to concrete with your own bullshit limits. Be willing to do the hard, uncomfortable work. Break them. Change.
Pain is expected, he says. Accept it. Endure it. Callous your mind. Then pain can't stop you. But the catch, there is no end to it. It's a continuous process of growth and challenge.
He acknowledges the people who helped along the way, even through challenge. Victor Pena, Shaljo, Bigby, Brown, Sheets, Dobbs, Kostman, Metz, many others. A reminder that even this intensely solo journey involves connection, support, sometimes tough love.
So we've traced this arc from hidden childhood hell to a life defined by, well, confronting suffering head-on and achieving extraordinary things. It's a profound mental rewiring.
We've hit on the accountability mirror, the cookie jar, the 40% rule, starting at 0, embracing ignorance, scheduling suffering, powerful tools.
The point isn't that everyone should try to be a SEAL or run ultras. It's about applying these concepts to your challenges. Work, school, habits, setbacks. It really is a mind game against yourself.
And if you buy into this, if you accept there's likely more in you, that maybe you are only operating at 40%, then the journey never really ends, does it? So the question becomes, what's one small, uncomfortable step you'll take today to find just 1% more? What truth will you face in your accountability mirror?
The source mentions hashtags people use to explore this. Hashtag can't hurt me, hashtag the 40% rule, hashtag don't get comfortable, hashtag empowerment to failure. Places to connect if this resonates.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.